How you doing?
Dude, you look.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. How are you? Thank you. I'm trying to be like you. Hi, Mr. Stowe.
How are you?
Thank you for interviewing Lyndon LaRouche.
Friend of mine. Good friend of mine and a good man. Fucked over by the bushes. But a good man.
Thank you, sir. I gave one of your staff our latest.
I probably read it already this morning.
All right. Thank you.
I read it the first thing every morning.
For almost 100 years before the tallest skyscraper in the city of Philadelphia was built, the small building over which it towers has been a mecca for many who seek to serve their fellow men. In this building, headquarters of the American Friends Service Committee, a division of the Society of Friends, people work to demonstrate that brotherly love and a respect for human dignity can overcome the causes of misery and hatred. The staff of the Service Committee is truly international in thought and in the origin of many of its members. And although it is sponsored by a religious sect, over 2/3 of its workers are not Quakers. In the United States, many of the projects of the committee are designed to give young people an opportunity to understand the causes of social problems through study, through service, and by meeting and exchanging ideas with other young people in different circumstances and from different backgrounds. Among these projects are a group of international seminars at which students from many lands meet with a selected faculty for 7 weeks each summer. One of these seminars is held in Plymouth, New Hampshire, a village nestled in a valley of the White Mountains. Here, the attractive buildings of a boys' private school house the students, faculty, and staff of the seminar. Each morning, the entire student body of the seminar attends a more or less formal discussion meeting. This meeting is guided by the dean of the faculty, and the subject is generally determined by the special field of knowledge of the visiting faculty member. These subjects may range from a discussion of the United Nations to a consideration of the relationship between science and society. But the meeting usually wanders freely away from the basic subject to embrace the questions, opinions, and special interests of the students. There are 25 students from 17 nations in this group. They bring to bear on the discussion of any subject a cross-section of most of the cultures of mankind.
America's involvement in World War II created many heroes, from the soldiers who fought on the beaches of Normandy to the assembly workers who made bombers and bullets. However, there's a little-known aspect of our involvement that deserves more attention. During the war, there were roughly 70,000 men who registered as conscientious objectors through the draft service, of which 12,000 were assigned alternative service. This mostly came in the form of public service camps, funded by pacifist institutions that provided civic services like conservation, forestry, and public health to neighboring communities.
dessen Konturen ich erst erahne. Anscheinend ein geniales Feedback-System, das jeden Angriff und jede Störung umgehend als Energiezufuhr für seine weitere Perfektionierung nutzt. Wer braucht so etwas? Wer denkt sich so etwas aus? Zwischen 1946 und 1953 treffen sich im New Yorker Beekman Hotel auf Einladung der Joshua Macy Foundation führende Wissenschaftler verschiedener Fachgebiete. Unter anderem Norbert Wiener, Margaret Mead, Gregory Bateson, Kurt Lewin und John von Neumann. Ziel dieser später Macy-Konferenzen genannten vertraulichen Treffen, an denen gelegentlich Beamte der CIA teilnehmen, ist eine Wissenschaft, die Vorhersage und Kontrolle menschlichen Verhaltens möglich macht. Das ist eine Waffe, die Amerika auf dem neuen Schlachtfeld des Unterbewussten im Kalten Krieg dringend braucht. Aufmerksam registriert die Macy-Gruppe deshalb die 1950 erschienene Studie Die autoritäre Persönlichkeit des International Institute of Social Research, eine Neugründung des Frankfurter Instituts für Sozialforschung um Max Horkheimer und Theodor W. Adorno. Die Studie ist das bisher umfassendste Sozialprofil einer Gesellschaft der USA und soll eine wissenschaftliche Erklärung für religiöse und rassistische Vorurteile liefern. Aus Tausenden von Interviews entsteht eine riesige Datensammlung, die durch modernste Computer ausgewertet wird und vor allem auf eine Frage Antwort geben soll. Wie kommt es zu autoritärem Verhalten als Massenphänomen? Die Ursache sehen die Autoren in der autoritären Matrix des Menschen, die den Schlüssel zur Psychologie des Faschismus und totalitärer Systeme überhaupt bietet. Diese Matrix bildet sich durch Erziehung und Tradition und ist scheinbar unauflösbar verbunden mit der metaphysischen Vorstellung von einer übernatürlich geschaffenen Natur. Wie konnte man die Anfälligkeit für Faschismus und Rassismus, speziell gegen Juden, gezielt aufspüren und nachweisen? Dafür konstruieren die Soziologen eine Skala zur Messung des faschistischen Potenzials, die sogenannte F-Skala. Darüber hinaus sollen mit neuesten psychologischen Verfahren, zum Beispiel den Tests des amerikanischen Psychologen Henry A. Murray, einem der Väter der heutigen Assessment Center, bisher verborgene Tendenzen der Persönlichkeit aufgespürt werden. Um Faschismus und Antisemitismus für immer zu verhindern, scheint es notwendig, die Natur des Menschen und dessen kulturelle Muster so zu verändern, dass diese autoritäre Matrix für immer verschwinden würde. Wie kann man unblutig und ohne Operation tief in die Persönlichkeit und das Bewusstsein von Menschen eindringen, um dieses dann gezielt zu verändern? Nach dem Gestaltpsychologen Kurt Lewin, einem Mitglied der Macy-Gruppe, müssen dafür zuerst die alten Werte und Gleichgewichte zerstört werden, um die Verhältnisse flüssig zu machen. Erst dann können neue Gleichgewichte und Werte etabliert werden. Diese müssen dann durch Selbstregulierung dauerhaft befestigt werden. Umerziehung soll in Selbstumerziehung übergehen. Das wird die Welt in eine postnationale, multiethnische Weltgesellschaft ohne festgeschriebene Grenzen verwandeln. Die erforderlichen Werkzeuge und Baupläne für diese neue Weltordnung glaubt die Macy-Gruppe anbieten zu können. Neue und schnellere Rechenmaschinen und kybernetische Modellwelten, mit denen alle Bereiche von Wissenschaft, Kultur und Politik kontrollier- und steuerbar erscheinen. Das verspricht auch die Programmierung neuer Menschen, anti-autoritärer Menschen nach Maß.
Columbia University President Grayson Kirk today demanded the immediate return of papers he claims were stolen when students occupied his office during their week-long sit-in. Meanwhile, a 5-man independent commission opened its investigation yesterday into the causes of the student protest, a protest that is still going on. CBS News correspondent Robert Shackney reports.
Education, some of it of a more or less formal character, has been resumed on the campus of Columbia University, but not in the way set out in the catalog, and certainly not the way it was 3 weeks ago. The student strike appears to have stopped most regular, most conventional instruction at Columbia. Replacing it are a variety of what the strikers call liberation classes. Some of these classes on campus lawns, some in private homes, some of them ad hoc gatherings to discuss politics, some rigidly following the college curriculum, but all outside university classroom buildings. All told, 125 special classes were listed by the Student Strike Committee. Under its rules, it's not breaking the strike. It's all right for professors to teach as long as the class is not held where it's normally scheduled. A class in advanced conversational French.
C'est que les polices...
In this confusion, it's hard to say how much anybody is learning. In many of the informal liberation classes, more time is devoted to discussion of strike issues than to academic subjects.
Well, no, I think this discussion is based upon the fact that nobody expects immediate changes, and yet everyone knows that there will be general changes over a period of time.
Regular classrooms are for the most part empty. A good many professors are observing the strike, not appearing in their assigned rooms. And to keep the strike going, student protesters have thrown picket lines in front of most academic buildings. Attendance inside is way down. Only the law, business, and engineering schools report anything approaching normality. A year of college education at Columbia University normally costs $1,900. This isn't the kind of education that parents were paying for. And certainly this kind of ad hoc university education can't go on forever. If nothing else, a spell of bad weather could have disastrous results. But in the face of student rebellion, this is the only kind of education at the moment that seems to work. Robert Shackney, CBS News, on the campus of Columbia University in New York.
In Brooklyn, New York, Black and Latino parents challenged the established order, working within the system. They demanded the power to run their neighborhood schools, to improve their children's future.
The children are ready to work. They come to school to work. And when they get to school, the teachers, they don't know what to do. The first thing they say, we don't understand the children. Well, they would try to understand the children. These problems wouldn't exist. The children are not stupid. They know when the teachers are there to help them.
Well, when my family moved here from Birmingham in 1965, they came from totally segregated schools. The children were all black, the teachers were all black, the principals were all black. One of my sons was above the national average in mathematics. But when he came to the schools here in Brooklyn, within 1 year, he was flunking math. And I went to the school to find out why. The teacher said my son was doing fine. I said, he's not bringing home assignments, and he's flunking math, and he came here from Alabama, and he was ahead of the national average, and you telling me he's doing fine? Something is wrong.
In New York City, only half of the children in Black and Latino neighborhoods finished high school. To make the schools work for their children, parents in the Ocean Hill-Brownsville section of Brooklyn planned to take charge. In the beginning, city officials were hopeful.
This decentralization plan does for our city schools in New York exactly what any stable, good school in any suburb has, which is to involve the parents sufficiently so they have a stake in the whole process of schools, and that's all we seek to do.
In 1967, with support from the Ford Foundation, the city made Ocean Hill-Brownsville an experimental district. An interracial governing board, elected by the community, chose educator Rhodey McCoy to lead the experiment. He became the first black superintendent in New York City.
The black people in this community have assumed the responsibility for their schools to try to improve and set the stage for quality education in an urban setting. And this was what the experiment was designed to do, and this is the reason that the parents became involved.
It was a joy to go to a board meeting. Not only were the board members present, but the community folk were sitting around. And they had as much input as the board members. And it was always on a positive note. How do we help the youngsters?
Before the experiment, 4 out of 5 teachers in the district were white. Now younger teachers, a number of them black, transferred to Ocean Hill-Brownsville. The students, 95% black and Latino, responded.
You felt more accepted. You weren't the outsider in your own school. They were a part of your environment. I mean, they were black. You can identify with them, and they can identify with you. It's as simple as that. There's no big mystery.
At first, the newly formed teachers' union, the United Federation of Teachers, supported the experiment. But with administrative decisions now being made by the community, the teachers were worried.
It was supposed to be an experiment and an involvement of teachers and parents, and suddenly decisions started to get made and no one knew how they were made or where they were made. So there was a lot of wariness on the part of teachers.
Albert Shanker, the UFT president, questioned where decentralization of the schools might lead.
Under the new proposal, teachers and supervisors would be hired on the basis of interview by local people. And this would mean that New York City would be faced with the same problem that a lot of other areas are, namely where local people don't want whites, there won't be any whites teaching. Where they don't want any blacks, there won't be any blacks. Where they don't want Jews or Italians or Irish or anybody else. We will essentially develop within New York City a series of school systems that are more segregated than the school system is at the present time. And I say that that is the beginning of destruction of our school system.
Through the 1967-1968 school year, the community board worked to assemble an integrated teaching staff. Some tenured teachers resisted neighborhood control of schools. The community board faced a dilemma.
In May, the local board had its regular meeting. I guess we were having meetings at that point about every 2 weeks. And on the agenda that night, McCoy had put an item, the transfer of 13 teachers and also some assistant principals. I guess there was 5 or 6 of them.
And we sat down and talked to the governing board member of the school and the principal of the school, and we came to the conclusion that these people were not going to work well in the system. And they had also demonstrated that they were opposed to the experiment.
We were asking teachers to make an extra effort to get along with our kids, to teach our kids, if there was any problem, to possibly visit in the homes. Well, the union didn't, this wasn't in their contract. They didn't have to do any of these things.
There was discussion, there was disagreement, there was a vote.
And we finally came to a conclusion that so that we could have a demonstration district, this is like 8 months after it had begun, that some of these people would have to be transferred, would have to go. But again, transferring teachers from one district to another with the Board of Education was something that was very ordinary. If a teacher was having problems, you would simply call up the superintendent of schools down at Livingston Street, and the person would be transferred. No questions were asked. But when McCoy tried to do it, of course, that created the scene of the century.
The teachers argued that the transfers were illegal. The city agreed. The dismissed teachers attempted to return to Junior High School 271, but community members refused to let them in.
Sit down there, Mr. Goldberg. So what you want here? You receive a letter from the governing board, right? This is the parents and the community. So you let your Albert Shanker continue running your life and keep on making it. You are not coming in soon.
Well, there's 19, and there are many more, but we figured we'd start slowly. These 19 have been knocking the program, have been causing trouble in the schools. We have people that are telling the black children that the Puerto Ricans are against them and the Puerto Ricans are against the blacks. We have to take steps to keep these people out, to make sure these people are not allowed in, to miseducate our kids, because if we allow this, then we're condoning it because we're paying their salaries.
You're sabotaging the classes. Now, I tried to find out what she meant by that. Do you know? The charges that was made previously, or the statement that's been made previously, is that we were sabotaging the project. Now, if that means questioning some of the actions of the governing board, then we must plead guilty to this. We have not been in complete agreement with everything they've done. Obviously, we're not in agreement with what they've done now.
At no time had anybody mentioned that there was a problem with my service, or for that matter, with any of the people who were named, or certainly the majority of them. I didn't know them all. But here was this letter that ordered me out. So all I can say is I was dumbfounded.
350 union teachers walked out of Ocean Hill-Brownsville schools to support the dismissed teachers. The community vowed to keep the schools open and maintain control.
So at one point the issue was just removing those teachers from our complex. And now the basic issue has to do with total community control over the schools. What does that mean, Mr. McCoy? It means control over the schools, personnel, finance, everything. Hiring, firing, absolutely.
September 1968, a new school year. The local board refused to take back the dismissed teachers. The teachers' union called a citywide strike. In the city of New York, education stopped for 1 million children. But in Ocean Hill-Brownsville, many teachers, black and white, crossed the picket lines in defiance of the union.
I came into the district because I want to be accountable to the community. If I'm not doing a job, then I want them to kick me out. See, this is the only way that we're going to bring about any change. We have to be accountable to someone. And in the New York City school system, there's no problem. Nobody gets fired.
Well, the strike was a unifying factor in the black community. Groups that had previously been at each other's throat found themselves together at rallies and meetings surrounding Ocean Hill. It was an issue that whether you were CORE or the NAACP or the Urban League or the Black Panther Party or the Republic of New Africa, you could rally around this community issue. Everybody understood the importance of black children receiving a quality education.
Good evening. I want to talk to you tonight from my heart on a subject of deep concern to every American. In recent months, members of my administration and officials of the Committee for the Re-election of the President, including some of my closest friends and most trusted aides, have been charged with involvement in what has come to be known as the Watergate affair. These include charges of illegal activity during and preceding the 1972 presidential election, and charges that responsible officials participated in efforts to cover up that illegal activity. The inevitable result of these charges has been to raise serious questions about the integrity of the White House itself. Tonight, I wish to address those questions.
General Rebell was well known to all people as having been a very successful OSS agent in World War II. And he and General John Singlaub were fellow young officers and did in fact jump behind Japanese lines throughout the Chinese, India and Burma theater of World War II. General Rebell was able to continue his exploits around the world, and especially during the time that he and I were together in Asia, General Rebell enjoyed the rank of a major general. I know for a fact that his ID card gave the rank of major general, and without question he had the full approval of the highest echelons of our government. And we must remember that all his old buddies in the OSS were now at the very top of the CIA, and Mitch Rebell knew personal anecdotes about all of the very top, the real hardcore members of the OSS who went on to become hardcore members of the CIA. Mitch Rebell operated without question with their approval. And I've been to various countries with Mitch Rebell, and I know that he was received without question with elements of the CIA present everywhere, and he was given the highest honors and treated as a visiting prince would be treated.
Where would we be now if there had been environmentalists way back when?
Hey, it'll take away jobs.
It'll pollute the environment.
It's obviously unsafe.
No wheels, no wheels, no wheels, no wheels.
There are still people today who want to stop progress.
Carter says he's for fiscal austerity. He's for conservation. He's against nuclear energy because he was frightened by it when he was in the Navy.
You know, some people talk about how many nuclear plants can you build. Understand American methods. You want to have 50 or 100 nuclear starts a year, we can do it. Just take the table of requirements. We need how many steel plants, how many of this, build them all, right now.
As I pointed out during the campaign, the United States is the only major industrial country without a comprehensive, long-range energy policy. The extremely cold weather this winter has dangerously depleted our supplies of natural gas and fuel oil and forced hundreds of thousands of workers off the job. I congratulate the Congress for its quick action on the Emergency Natural Gas Act, which was passed today and signed just a few minutes ago. But the real problem, our failure to plan for the future or to take energy conservation seriously, started long before this winter, and it will take much longer to solve. I realize that many of you have not believed that we really have an energy problem, but this winter has made all of us realize that we have to act. Now, the Congress has already made many of the preparations for energy legislation. presidential assistant, Dr. James Schlesinger, is beginning to direct an effort to develop a national energy policy. Many groups of Americans will be involved. On April the 20th, we will have completed the planning for our energy program and will immediately then ask the Congress for its help in enacting comprehensive legislation. Our program will emphasize conservation. The amount of energy being wasted, which could be saved, is greater than the total energy that we are importing from foreign countries. We will also stress development of our rich coal reserves in an environmentally sound way. We'll emphasize research on solar energy and other renewable energy sources, and we'll maintain strict safeguards on necessary atomic energy production. The responsibility for setting energy policy is now split among more than 50 different agencies, departments, and bureaus in the federal government. Later this month, I will ask the Congress for its help in combining many of these agencies in a new energy department to bring order out of chaos. Congressional leaders have already been working on this for quite a while. We must face the fact that the energy shortage is permanent. There is no way we can solve it quickly, but if we all cooperate and make modest sacrifices, if we learn to live thriftily and remember the importance of helping our neighbors, then we can find ways to adjust and to make our society more efficient and our own lives more enjoyable and productive.
What the president proposed this evening could lead to one of the most radical turnabouts of our time in strategic nuclear policy, and we will spend most of this broadcast trying to put that extraordinary proposal into some kind of perspective. But when the president went on television this evening to talk about the Soviet military buildup and the need for an increased U.S. defense budget, he was doing so within minutes of a decisive rejection by the House of Representatives. They had just cut his proposed defense spending increase by more than half. So the president tonight was talking not only about his adversaries overseas, but those here at home, too. And when his proposal for a space-age defense system against Soviet ballistic missiles gets a full airing, the controversy is going to get bigger and certainly more complicated. As we suggested earlier, and as Jack Smith now reports, the president's plan represents a revolutionary change in U.S. nuclear strategy.
"10 points ahead, Michael Dukakis seems untouchable."
There's a stupid, untrue, terrible rumor floating around that Dukakis had suffered a serious depression after he lost his first re-election campaign for governor and had been treated by a psychiatrist.
Just now vetoed the defense authorization bill in the Oval Office.
And I think we tamped it down for at least a week or so.
Do you feel that Michael Dukakis should make his medical records public?
And then Ronald Reagan, president, in a news conference, was asked about something about Dukakis' policies or whatever.
Do you think that American people deserve to know whether he's fit to govern by having his medical records made public?
Look, I'm not going to pick on an invalid.
Mr. President, why shouldn't we understand?
Every line I have on my desk is ringing. Everybody's phone is ringing.
Hello?
Well, I was pretty upset. I mean, an incumbent president is calling the Democratic nominee an invalid. What do you mean by that?
The president elevated this crazy rumor to something that made some people believe it. I was very, very angry.